Hello and welcome to today's live webinar where we look at the ASX investment opportunities in review. Any individual reading or listening should discuss with their financial planner or advisor the merits of any recommendation or offer presented in this material for their own specific circumstances, and realise that not all investments are appropriate for every individual. Up on screens, the performance of the algorithm model for the ASX 100, and this reflects the performance updated at the end of September. The 5-year average is now running at 18.83%, including dividends, so outperforming the ASX 200 accumulation index by around 11%, so certainly by a wide margin. If you'd like access to the technology that we're going to run through today, it's available as a subscription. We're running a special where it's $1,320 for 12 months access, and if you would like to find out more about it, please visit investorsignals.com or call our office on 1300 614 002. Thank you. Okay, so moving straight into a graph of the XJO. Let's bring this up into screen now. So up on screen, there's a graph of the XJO. So the index has had a fairly substantial correction. We're trading at around 5,700 at the moment. I sort of tend to think that we're pretty close to this 50% retracement level, which will prove to be a reasonable support level in the market. So with that, let's go into the model portfolio. We'll select the ASX 100 and we'll go through the stocks that are currently in the model and identify sort of the high conviction ideas off the back of that. So what I've done here is gone into model portfolio, selected ASX 100, come across here, select on the first code, and we'll start moving through these. Adelaide Brighton, so I don't mind that. I think the support level down here at $5.50 looks okay to me, but it's not one of our preferred holdings, so I'll skip through these. AGL, I think, is oversold, and that's made it into the notes that we'll review during today's recording, but I think it's $17.50. That's well supported by 5.5–6% dividend yield. Aristocrat Leisure, keep this one on your radar. As it moves back down to around $25, I suspect it starts to run into some strong buying support. So we're $26 at the moment. So make a note of this one, somewhere between 26 and 25.50. Watch for these short-term momentum indicators to turn positive. I think Aristocrat can continue to deliver 10 to 20% earnings growth. So this sell-off here, and this is really a PE correction where the market's sold anything that's trading on stretched PE multiples. So at around that $25 find support, and it'll be a good entry point there. Ansell, add this one to your list as well. I think the correction from $30 down to $22, it'll take a little while for it to find support, but around this $21, $22 level represents good value for Ansell. Again, watch these momentum indicators, look for them to start to turn positive, but Ansell around that level should be on your list as well. Now, the Australian banks, they're under pressure, but they are oversold, may bounce in line with the index. ASX, we don't mind this at $58. That's on about a 3.7% dividend yield. And you can see there that I've got sort of the range that would be sort of deep discount to accumulate in. I don't think it can rally up and make a new high, though. The yield compression that we've seen in ASX, it used to trade on about a 5.5% yield. Now it trades on 3.5% yield. I don't see that there's scope for it to really, in the short term, rally up and take out that high. So it's one that you probably want to sell a covered call over to enhance the return. Illumina, think about this. So we've got, it's under algorithm buy signals around that 250 level. Horizon, now this is one that I've covered in the last few recordings, and the strategy here is that we were short the stock up here at around 550. It's switched to algorithm buy conditions. It's in the early stages of finding support. I think as we go on into sort of into 2019, we'll likely see AZJ start to make a higher high and higher low and a new uptrend emerge, supported by about a 5.5% dividend yield. So within the Australian banks, it's worth just noting that we're starting to see buy signals pop up in a couple of these names. So you can go in and have a look at the 4 majors and the 2 regionals and just check where we are with the algo signals. But again, my view there is there's maybe a bounce underway, but probably not a recovery to new highs. BHP is under buy conditions, whereas Rio's not. So our preference is exposure to BHP in around $31. I think that looks pretty good. Blue Scope Steel, so under algorithm buy signals there at around $14. So again, all these stocks that we're going through will have algorithm buys because they're current holdings in the top 100 model portfolio. What we're going to do is just move through these and then come back at the end of the recording and have a look at our preferred opportunities. Brambles at around $10.50. I think this is good value. I spoke last week about the upcoming split where they're going to spin off their plastic pallet pooling business. Brambles has filled the price gap back down to around 10.06, and I think that support should trade a little bit higher from there. Car sales, I'd had a question mark on this one simply because whether the growth was there to support the valuation, and the latest earnings update last week I think was sufficient to reinforce sort of those doubts. So our preference is SEEK over car sales. Charter Hall, I spoke last week about the REITs and the support that they're getting from yields backing off, so that's something we'll look at today, and I highlighted that the preference was GPT and Centre Group, so we'll look at those ones. I think CIMIC, so make a note of this, at $45, I think CIMIC's good value. They got a very strong pipeline of work in hand. The macro backdrop for infrastructure spending supports ongoing earnings growth for CIMIC. I think the company can deliver 10, 12, 13% earnings growth over the next 2-3 years, and that makes it a bit of a standout in a fairly moderate earnings growth environment. So CIMIC and just note there is a price gap down to 43.50, so it could be wet between 45.50 and 43.50 is our buy zone there in CIMIC. I'll just check that. So we've got, so we have CIMIC on the high conviction list, so we'll have a look at that. Again, we'll come back and visit that at the end. Moving through, Computershare, not there at the moment. I think that's a bit expensive. CSL, so I posted it on the blog today, just reminding that we've got the higher low formation in CSL. It's corrected from 230 down to 175. CSR looking a little oversold. Interesting, last week in the US with the equity market sell-off, we saw money come into the home builders in the US. Now the home builder sector's down anywhere between 20 and 40%, so it's quite oversold in the US. But with interest rates coming, like the yield on the 10-year treasuries in the US backing off a little bit, you've started to see money shift back into the US home builders, which probably should flow through to maybe a better couple of weeks ahead for CSR and Boral. So that's just something to have a think about there. So keep an eye on CSR and just see if we start to see a bit of buying support building there. Now, Crown and Star Entertainment both look oversold. Crown's in the model portfolio where Star is not. Star's under algorithm sell conditions. Crown here at $12.50 looks good value to me. So I haven't added it to the high conviction list yet, but Crown's certainly added. Where the comment being there, sub $13 looks good value. So again, at the end of today's recording, when we send out a copy of it, just keep an eye out in the email below the link to replay it. There's a link there to the notes that that go with today's presentation. But Crown at $12.50 looks good value. Cleanaway, so around $1.70. This was added to the model. Dulux Group, not really doing too much there. Downer EDI, I think this is worth just pausing. And so if you go back 6 months ago, 3 months ago, Downer delivered an earnings result that showed about 10 to 13% earnings growth, and the company reaffirmed that they're expecting to continue to deliver that type of growth over the next 2 to 3 years. Downer, a large part of their business is government contract work, large infrastructure developments. A smaller part of their business is mining services, Now, there's speculation that they're going to look to spin that mining services division off and sell it out as a separate entity. So whereas maybe historically you thought about Downer as predominantly mining services, today the mix of that has certainly changed. At around 650 to 675, I think Downer's good value. Not doing their indexes. Evolution, so this was one that we had on the high conviction list here at around 260, 270. We've taken profit at 310. And we have left Newcrest in there for the moment under the high conviction, although at the end of last week Newcrest switched to a sell, which we'll have a look at the end of today's presentation. Flight Centre, sub $45. I had a target of $43 on the notes, saying that at 43 it would represent good value. Keep an eye on it between that 45 to 43 level. Fortescue announced a share buyback, helping to underpin the share price. Iron ore price is not doing too much at the moment, but certainly the share buyback helps at the margin there to put support under the price. GPT, so this was our preferred property REIT, real estate investment trust exposure. So at 480, it's rallying up towards 520. At around 525, I think it's worth selling covered calls and stripping out that income from the option and the upcoming dividend. Now, Healthscope, there's been a takeover bid at $2.36 a share. The prior takeover was at $2.50, but that was when the Asian hospital assets were part of the portfolio. Since then, Healthscope's sold those off, which explains the reduced bidding price. The core asset here that Healthscope has is the completion of the new North Shore Hospital in Sydney. Private equity's made a takeover bid at $2.36. I suspect that the board this time around will have to let them proceed with due diligence, whereas last time they rejected the offer. I think shareholders will have some pressure on the board to engage with private equity over this takeover bid. So at $2.10, could be good value given the takeover is at $2.36. Insurance Australia Group, so support here at around $6.75. My notes are sub $7. It's good value. IAG should trade back up to $7.50. We've got the upcoming dividend, plus there's around 20 odd cents of capital return to come back to shareholders in the next 6 months as a result of the sale of some of the Insurance Australia Asian assets. I think Vietnam, as an example, was one of the assets. I put an article on the blog today around that. IOOF not doing there at the moment, starting to look quite oversold. Now, Incitec, this is one that I had highlighted that let's keep an eye out for the upcoming algo signal. So the stock has corrected from 420. We're now down at around 360, and last week we've had the algorithm buy signal. I think the long-term fundamentals here for Incitec are attractive. So buying it with a stop loss below 370 is something that is certainly worth considering. And we'll just adjust the notes to reflect that. So I've just added in there that it's now showing a buy signal. So we'll just highlight that to revisit. Now, JB Hi-Fi, preference still JB over Harvey Norman, but hard to get excited about these retail names. James Hardie, US home building or exposure to US home building. The sell-off that we've had from $24 down to $19, tie that in with home builders doing well last week in the US. I think it's worth keeping an eye on James Hardie as a trade. Whether the fundamentals are strong enough to create a new high, that's yet to be seen. But I think maybe somewhere around this sub $19 looks value. We could get a bounce back up to maybe $20, $21 there. Lendlease looks oversold to me, so this starts to make it onto the high conviction list at around this $17 level. The stock looks attractive, so we're going to add Lendlease into the notes there. And we'll remove it from the general notes. Okay, so mate, just mark down there Lend-Lease between sort of this 16 and 1750 level. I've just highlighted that there's a price gap back down to about 1605. Between sort of where we're trading today and that price cap, I'd expect Lend-Lease to find support. Mervac, we can see there the higher low at Medibank Private. This looks oversold to me at these levels. I suspect we probably get an algorithm sell signal in the next 2 to 3 months on Medibank. So looking for it to move from oversold conditions here, rally back up somewhere around $3, probably an opportunity to take profit and get out of it. So we'll just watch for that switching from buy conditions into sell conditions into the early part of the new year. Macquarie, we've had a buy signal there at around 110. In my notes, I've got it as a buy if we see it at 108. Aurora, which is the spin-off from Amcor, so around $3, but not one that we're really pursuing at the moment. Oil Search, so Oil Search and Santos are in the model portfolios, and this sell-off, I think, in both names look interesting. We've also got a buy signal in Woodside Petroleum, which was another one that we had on our watch list. So maybe just coming back and having a look at Oil Search, Santos, and Woodside as considerations. Qantas, not really doing too much there at the moment. Cube Holdings, so this made its way into the model portfolio following the correction back down here to 230, but not one that I'm sort of rushing into at the moment. Obviously, taking a broad-based approach to the model portfolio, you'd have exposure to all of these names. But if you're having to sort of cherry pick the best opportunities out, that's the idea of today's webinar, is to try to identify a handful of names that we think are more likely to perform than the next opportunities or the next holdings in the portfolio. REA Group, nothing there at present. ResMed, so this has delivered a trading update. The first quarter 2019 trading update last week showed strong revenue growth. Profit was up about 30% on the same time last year. And ResMed, I think, is very good value down here at around $14. The sell-off in the market, when you look across CSL, ResMed, Cochlear, Sonic Healthcare, picking up these healthcare names on a pullback in the market makes sense to me. ResMed's one that makes it onto the high conviction list. Reliance Worldwide, South 32. Look, I think support back here between 350 and maybe 320. So my preference is still BHP over South 32, though. But something to have a think about. Centre Group, so GPT and Centre Group were two of the preferred high yield names that we've covered throughout this Opportunities in Review webinar. GPT certainly rallied strongly already. I think Centre Group could push back above $4, and this is all driven by the belief that global growth has slowed down enough for there to be a repricing of the rate in which the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates. And that's helping to create a little bit of a bounce in some of these yield-sensitive names. So looking for Centre Group back above $4. Seek, technology names and high PE have been sold off heavy in this market route. In the case of Seek, I'm looking for it to sort of reach oversold conditions. We'll probably see it rally back up to higher levels and an algorithm sell signal. So at this stage, it's just kind of on the early part of the watch list, looking for support to develop in an oversold area. So we'll continue to watch that, and I'll update on the blog when we finally develop an entry point into that. Sonic Healthcare, this looks oversold to me, so somewhere around $22. The momentum indicators are still trending a little bit lower, but around this $22 expected to find support. Spark Infrastructure, not doing there. Santos, so keep Santos, Woodside and Oil Search on your watch list. look at the momentum indicators, watch for them to turn positive. I think the sell-off ultimately produces a buying opportunity across those three names. Suncorp under buy conditions here at around 330. So, and I've just marked that was value there at around 1350. Sydney Airports, I think this is getting back to a support level where it's a little bit oversold, looking for a move back up into that $6.75 to $7 range. With Sydney, I'd be selling covered calls over it. Tabcorp at around 450. I think we add this one back onto the high conviction list. Tabcorp at 450 is worth another look. We made good money out of Tabcorp. We bought this going into the earnings result. The stock rallied. We've taken profit on it, and then now at around 450. I think it's worth buying into it again ahead of the February dividend and earnings update. So we're going to put value there, and we'll remove it from the general notes and shift it down to the high conviction list. All right, so moving on from Tabcorp, TPG not doing there at present. Treasury Wines, again a correction of a high PE name, but a very good business. So same as when you think about Aristocrat Leisure, Treasury Wines, Seek, all have good forward earnings growth, but trading on high PEs, and we're seeing that sort of adjustment throughout the market across those high growth names that were on stretched PEs. So with Treasury Wines, I think it's worth watching this one, put it on the list. Support to me is probably on the downside, maybe $13.50, $13.70. So between $15 and $13.70, looking for it to find support within a day or two of where we are at the moment in the market. So we'll update that on the blog. I haven't put it on the high conviction list yet, but we'll certainly update it on the blog when we see it move into that buy range. Vicinity, sort of interesting there, just a high real estate investment trust, but looking like it's setting up okay. Westpac's actually been added now into the model portfolio. But still hard to get too excited about the banks. So Wesfarmers retraced back into the target range. You may remember between $45 and $46 was the notes on Wesfarmers. So comfortable buying Wesfarmers now, or just wait until the Coles spin-off happens and then look at buying both businesses and sell covered calls over them to enhance the income. But Wesfarmers is now corrected about 50% of this trend, and I think it's finding support there on the old resistance of around $45. So I don't expect it to rally back and create a new high anytime soon, but we should sort of find that this starts to be pretty close to where the turning point or the floor is in Wesfarmers. Whitehaven not doing there at the moment. Woolworths at $27, $27.50 looks okay value. You want to be selling covered calls over Woolworths to enhance the return, though. Woodside Petroleum. So maybe if we just stop here and have a look at this, if we think about Woodside, Santos, and Oil Search all in a similar light. In the case of Woodside, it's corrected from $39 back down to $33, $34. That's 50% of this retracement. I think sort of a deep sell-off's $32, but certainly somewhere between 32 and 34 ends up being support here for Woodside. So that one I haven't added to the high conviction list, but it's gone from where we were watching it. So it's gone from the watch list and it's been shifted into the actual sort of general opportunities that we're watching. So I'm just going to shift that now. So we go. So that was one that we were waiting for the buy signal to occur, and that's now occurred. So we're just going to shift that IPL one into there as well. which only leaves QBE as the only one that's left on our sort of watch list where we're waiting for. So, okay, and then that's it, back to Adelaide Brighton. So I'll just bring the notes into screen at the moment. So again, when we send out the replay, you'll have access to this. So watch for the little link below the replay button. So there's a couple of US stocks that I've started to cover. So Dow DuPont, Walmart, Intel, and Microsoft. So if you're going into the charts, just start to have a look at those names. If we go through here, the general notes, so Brambles, I'm just thinking between this sort of 10 to 10.50 is a good opportunity. HealthScope's oversold, approaching the merger. I think there's an opportunity there in HealthScope. Flight Centre, a little bit oversold, but between $43 and $45, I think is the buy zone. CSL, so we're back in the buy zone there at $170. Parang, I think we just want to be a bit cautious there, so I'm just going to leave a question mark there around that, and we'll continue to revisit that. Seek sub $18. I think we're looking for a buy level there. And I'll update on the blog regarding that. Aristocrat, so a little bit like Seek, where I think we can say there that between 26 and 25 is the buy range there for Aristocrat. Cleanaway, I've just pointed out the analysts like the name at around 170. It's found support. It's under algorithm buy conditions. We can't do call options over that, so it's really sort of more something you're holding for the dividend and ongoing capital growth. AGL's ended up oversold, so we go between, I think, say $17 where we are at the moment and maybe $18.50, looking for a move back towards that $20 level. GPT, so it's starting to push up against sort of that exit range there where we want to be selling calls at around that 525 level. Hack, which is the, let's just bring that into screen and have a look at this. So this is the ETF that we've been tracking. So I've created a fairly wide band there for this, but if we look back at the last algo buy signal, we had a signal around 525, it rallied to 750. So this just gives you broad base exposure to global cyber securities. I'm just thinking that the sell-off that we've had, so maybe back down around this 625 level, between sort of 650 and $6, probably find support again, and expect that to turn out to be a reasonable long-term entry level into that ETF. I'll bring the notes back into screen. IAG sub $7 is a buy, so we covered that during Iris. Just take a look at that on the chart. It's approaching oversold levels. Macquarie Group, looked at that at 108. Wesfarmers, we covered that at 46. BRG, let's just bring that into screen. So this is Breville. It hasn't done too much, still sitting on the support there. What we looked at is that it's covered the price gap. It's under algorithm buy conditions. So just bringing that one to your attention, but not one that's on the high conviction list. Sonic Healthcare, so value there at, say, $22.50. So I think that's one that's almost ready to go onto the high conviction list. Ansell, I think it's value at sort of $21.50, $22, so that's almost ready to go on the high conviction list. ResMed is, I'm not sure value is the right word, but certainly, there's long-term growth there in ResMed, and we had that algorithm buy signal at $13.75. So that can probably push up a bit higher. Woodside Petroleum, so this is one that's come from the watch list section, and I've today shifted it up here because we're under algorithm buy conditions. So just making sure that you continue to watch Santos, Oil Search, and Woodside, given the sell-off that they've had. Crown sub $13 looks good value, so we're now at $12.50 in that, and I think ultimately Crown can trade up to $14. Incitec Pivot, it's gone from the watch list now under algorithm buy conditions, so we'll continue to watch that and look to tighten up the entry opportunity there. So the yield sensitive names that we like have been Centre Group, VCX, which not really doing much there, nor in MGR. Sydney, I think that starts to find support at sort of this 650 level. And I think we can say that there's now value on offer there. Transurban's rallied back, but that's under algo sell conditions. Now, as two sort of special situation opportunities is Star Entertainment. I think it's worth having a look at that, and Amcor. Amcor is subject to is doing a takeover of Bemis Group in the US. And I think that what happens here is the hedge funds short the company making the takeover and go long the company being acquired. That trade will start to unwind coming into the shareholder vote. At $13, Amcor's, I think, oversold, probably trades back closer towards $14. So there's an opportunity there. Now, both Star and Amcor are actually under algorithm sell conditions. So I try not to focus on those names too often, but just drawing to your attention that they both look oversold. And the way to approach that is if you're taking an entry level in it, just run a tight stop loss below the recent low, just in case sort of the downtrend continues. But to me, both of those names look oversold. Now, if we go on to the high conviction list, so URW continue to believe that over the next 6 months we'll start to see better earnings results come through from URW, which is Unibail. That's the property trust that took over Westfield. Newcrest, we've seen this rally. This was on our high conviction list at around $19. It's now pushing up towards 21. Let's just bring Newcrest into screen and have a look at it. What gives me a little bit of caution here with Newcrest is that we're now under algorithm sell signals, but we've had a strong move back, which was really a call on the market being a little bit volatile and gold doing well in that environment. So we've taken profit on Evolution, and I'll just highlight that so we can close that one out in next week's notes. And Newcrest watching, but at the moment we've still got that in the high conviction. ASX is a good income line for portfolio. Buy it, sell covered calls. It's corrected a long way and looks to be good value down here. CWY, we spoke about that one. CYB, look, this actually sell-off's been much deeper than I expected. So let's bring the chart in and have a look at what's gone on here. And I think there's probably reason to be cautious here on CYB. The correction's been fairly deep. If we go back and have a look where was support last time, somewhere around this 450, say 425 up to maybe $5 is the range where it last found support. This is the old this is Clydesdale Bank, which was a spin-off from NAB. They've acquired Virgin Money in the in the UK, which should be a net positive for the company over the next 2 to 3 years. There are risks around the Brexit and what impact that has on valuations, but maybe just keep this on your watch list and just wait for a more sort of positive turn higher. But I really feel that there's actually value on offer here in CYB. Other stocks in the high conviction. CIMIC Group, so we spoke about that between 43 and 46. Downer EDI, I think anything sub $7, but say specifically $6.75 where we are at the moment. GPT was original high conviction at 480. That's pretty much done that trade now, and you just want to be thinking about selling covered calls over that. So I'll highlight that and look to remove that for next week. Tabcorp at 450 is value. That's made it into the high convictions, and then so is Lendlease at $17. So just to recap, on the short side, we'll probably just revisit the shorts next week. So I think what you want to be thinking about: Tabcorp at 450, Lendlease at $17, Downer at 675, Simic at where it is at the moment. Just be aware that there's the price gap $1 or $2 lower. I think Medibank's oversold, but probably makes a lower high in 3 months' time and gets removed from the model. CYB volatile but good value. ASX is an income line. Newcrest, we'll watch this closely for the opportunity to take profit on that. URW oversold but very slow to shift on fundamentals, so that's not really a short-term trading opportunity, but it does present good long-term value. Amcor, unique situation with the takeover of Bemis on the New York Stock Exchange. So they're acquiring their main competitor in America. And I spoke about how the hedge funds position around that. SGR oversold, but a little bit risky because you're buying into a downtrend. Centre Group, good dividend yield. You're getting about 6% yield. Should push up above $4 and sell covered call. QBE, we're watching for the next buy signal. Ones that we've gone from watching that are actually now in place is a buy signal on IPL. Crown sub $13 is a good buy. Woodside Santos, Oil Search should be on your list. ResMed I've covered. Ansell, I think, is good value. Sonic is good value. So really start to think about focusing on those names. Wes, you could act now or just wait to the spin-off of Coles. Iris looking oversold. So that's more of a trading stock, though. That's not something that, I sort of view with a high conviction. IAG, I think, through the capital returns and dividends looks attractive to me. Hack, one to think about, a little bit sort of out of the ordinary. GPT, we're selling calls. AGL looks oversold, but obviously these retail electricity stocks are under pressure from government intervention in pricing. Aristocrat Leisure, I make sure you make a note of that, but 2025 and 26 looks good. I think Seek's getting oversold. And maybe sort of Flight Centre back down to 43. Brambles, bit more of an income trade, but at $10.25, $10.50 looks pretty well supported. Okay, thank you for listening into today's recording, and hopefully some of those opportunities in review you've made a note of. If you haven't, this table's now available at the bottom of the replay email, and keep an eye out for the blog where we summarise the entry points into these and other opportunities that we consider high conviction.